So, good morning, everybody. I am so thrilled to be here today with Ngaio Davis, Deathcare Guide and founder of KORU Cremation, Burial, and Ceremony. Thank you so much for being here today, Ngaio, on the Living Resource Project.
Thank you, Tracy. It always means so much when you include me, and what a fabulous way to just introduce us all to your community and your people.
Community, our people. So, the Living Resource Project is a compassionate communities initiative that serves to remind us that we already have what it takes to show up for the dying and the grieving among us, and that we need each other on this journey of life, which includes death. So, Niall, just to get started, can you tell us a little bit about what exactly it is that you do over there at KORU and how you support the dying, the dead, and the bereaved?
Yeah, so on a really basic level, we are a licensed funeral provider. So licensed funeral home is the terminology most people are familiar with. And we're licensed by the province of BC. So it means that we operate in a way that has some similarities to conventional funeral homes that might come to mind. And we have deliberately chosen to be a death care business that focuses on eco death care and to really try and invite families to be included back into being with our dead,
Mhm.
and to invite the community to be back and in touch with a journey and events and process that we used to all just be a part of. So we look after people when they want to be cremated, when they want to be buried. It could be conventional burial or green burial. We'll also help people if they want natural organic reduction, which would need to take place out of province in Washington state. And we help look after the dead. We help the families of the dead to understand what will happen with their person who has died. That we encourage them to be a part of their physical body care, to be a part of the cleansing, if that's something that they feel they can do and want to do. Not all people are prepared to do that on their own. So if they want our support, we're there for them. That may take place at the bedside in hospice. It may take place in a private home, or it may even take place at our place of practice in Vancouver. So we really make sure that we've had thorough conversations with people about their dead and what's happening with them. We never want our client families to feel like we're just swooping in and taking over. We'll have a quick meeting, and then in 2 weeks, if it's cremation, you'll get a little box.
You've said a lot that I'm sure many people that are listening to this recording are unfamiliar with. Things like natural organic reduction or aquamation, just because we don't talk about dying or death or disposition as much as we should. And we don't have the time right now to get into those things, but I just want to guide listeners if they're hearing these things for the first time, that you have a lot of information on your website and to go over to KORU and learn a little bit more over there. I can't get over how many people are completely blown out of the water when they hear the cremation rates in BC, which are, what are they at now? Like almost 90%.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's
And then
right.
they learn that cremation is so hard on Mama Earth.
Yeah.
And especially for people that you live their lives really trying to take care of Mama Earth, and their values are so rooted in caring for our planet that they're just horrified when they understand that their last act is going to cause great harm. So I just want to go back to that and praise you for all the work you're doing, and your mother, to advocate for greener ways of disposition, and that there are exciting things coming, and to go to your website for more information. Yeah, it's really exciting. I just wish these things would happen faster. Like,
Oh,
I want them like, I mean,
yes.
yesterday.
Yeah.
I really hope I live long enough so
Yeah.
that my death can be a generative act. I can give my atoms back to the earth. There's something that's so much bigger than just disposition. When we hold those stories about life and death being generative and the source of rebirth, and these greener forms of disposition support that story,
Yeah, they
especially.
absolutely do. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's so important. I know that for some communities, these forms of disposition may not be a good fit in BC. If it's aquamation, the reliance on water, terramation, maybe they just don't have the numbers to support that kind of a setup.
Mhm.
But that we don't even have the option to choose it and have that carried out in this province is criminal to me. It just doesn't seem like that should be possible, but it is.
But it is. And I also feel, just on a personal note, it's important to also mention that there are certain cultures that are practicing this generative type of disposition through natural burial. And it just really shows how far we've come from these natural practices.
Yeah.
So I just want to name that. But I really appreciate all that you do and how you really at every turn seem to make it a conscious effort to give that power back to the family and provide them with lots of options so they can make the decisions that are best for them.
Hmm.
And how you're really inviting people in to provide as much care as they feel comfortable.
Thank you for acknowledging that. And I think it also helps on ceremony sides of things as well, because there are many people, when you talk to others in the conventional funeral home space, who are very familiar with the trend of so-called just immediate disposition, no service requested. Often what I find is that it's not that there's no services happening at all. The funeral homes may not be involved, but I've also noticed with how we are approaching death care and really trying to gently encourage and persuade families to become involved, it gives them another insight into what ceremony can be. And they will, in a way, kind of end up in rituals that translate into ceremony without even knowing that's what they're doing. You cannot just go through death ticking boxes and completing tasks. There's a reason why our ancestors and other people in other parts of the world today are very closely tied to ritual and ceremony when it comes to death. And so if I can sneak those things in, then I think all the better for all of us.
I love that. And I love what you said too. It's such a natural thing. Like it really is in us. And people just need almost like the space for someone to say, this is normal, this is good. And then it's amazing what people will come up with on their own as far as meaningful actions with intention that really create that slowing down, that connection, that meaning, that presence with what is. It's amazing. People really do. I think they need that, need someone there to guide them into that space. And then
Yeah,
it's amazing what can arise.
yeah, absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
beautiful. Okay, Niall, can you share a little bit about how you got into this role and doing what you're doing? What led you here?
A sore back and sore knees actually led me to this. And that's a bit of a cheeky response, but I'm a carpenter by trade as well. And that's what I was doing before I got into funeral services. And it was my sore back and knees that just made me say, I don't want this for my body. And I need to be able to do something else. What's it going to be? So that's where my head was at. And that would have been in the late 90s. And little things kept happening as soon as I made that decision that I needed to figure out something else for the health of my body. And the little things that kept happening kept drawing me into death care work. And at that time, it was conventional funeral service work. Ultimately, after a conversation with an old childhood friend whose younger brother I used to play with and build forts with, he got into funeral service, and I went and spoke with Aaron. And I was enamored with how his face just lit up when he talked about his work, how his body language changed. I can't remember anymore exactly what he was saying, but I just felt so envious and awed that he was experiencing this. I've never felt this about building houses. Like I love working with my hands, but just like how do you transform like that when you talk about your work. And so the more I looked into it after speaking with Aaron, the more I just had this sense of there's so much deepness in the work. There's just so many different facets of what can happen. And I really felt like I fit the work and I felt like the work fit me. And I started to appreciate why Aaron's face just lit up. And I wanted that for myself. So I eventually bugged enough funeral homes, and one in particular that they took me on first to work part-time. So I'm still building houses during the day and then doing funeral service work on evenings and on weekends. And they offered me apprenticeship, and then it went from there. And then after 12 years or so of working for other people in the conventional space, I got to a point where I was not feeling that joy anymore. I wasn't feeling lit up. And it was because of the way I was being asked to practice the work, not because of the work itself. And so I knew I needed to make a change again. And rightly or wrongly, I thought that change should be that I start my own practice. And that's what I did. And so it's been a journey as well. And it's been humbling. I learn every day. I've had to shed a lot of conventions that I was taught because we're all taught the same way. The death care that is practiced on a commercial level is very niche and it's a small world. We get taught basically by the same people. And it felt really great to be able to start to shed some of that and really learn from clients and learn from listening to them, understanding what it is they're actually saying, and like reading behind some of their words as well with the experience that I had, and saying, I think I can safely and with confidence say that yes, we can offer just natural death care. We don't have to do embalming, even when people want to spend time with them. And yeah, I really can invite a family member to come and be a part of this. And I don't have to be afraid of all the things that we were taught to be afraid of. So that was such a release to let that go. And I'm still learning, even after 10 years of doing it on my own. So it's been quite a journey.
That's beautiful. You're still learning. I mean, and I can feel that passion that you speak of your friend Erin having. I see that in you for sure. I really do. I have the opportunity to have conversations with you pretty regularly, and I see all the things you're doing out there in the community, and I see passion when I see what you're up to. So I hope that those changes have led you to a place where you're feeling that fire again.
Absolutely. I love what I do. I was having a conversation with a colleague yesterday, actually, and I said, but what would you do anything else if you weren't doing this? Like, would you really not want to do this with
Yeah.
all of our, small gripes and things that we go through? He owns a funeral business as well. And we both just said, yeah, no,
No.
this is what we love. Yeah.
Speaking of taking the lead of your clients, like you just alluded to, and focusing on what you're still learning, do you have any stories that come to mind about clients you've supported in the past that have somehow surprised you or deepened your understanding of the end of life journey that you're comfortable sharing with us?
Yeah. So I'll share one. This was a really early on with me owning my own funeral death care practice. And it was the first time that I had really worked with a family who did the home vigil and did much of their own care of their person who died. And they relied on me for administrative support, for just knowledge of the industry and how to be able to manage the crematorium, and for my information and experience and what I could share about the transitions that they could expect to see with their person who died. So I will never forget this family because they really stood out in my mind. And there was one family member in particular who was very passionate about keeping her mom at home after she died. She had been caring for her mom for a number of years. Her mom was at that point living with Alzheimer's. And then there were other physical things that were going on with her body as well. And she had done so much of her own homework, and she had understood and learned that you could, as a private person of the public, keep your dead at home when they die. So she had done all of that learning and then somehow was connected to my services. We spoke. She laid out very clearly that she wanted to keep her mom at home. She wanted to be able to bathe her, to care for her. She wanted to be able to have the home funeral services there, and that all take place over a series of days. And at the end of that, she wanted my help to be able to transport her mom to a crematorium and for her and her family to be present. So she knew what she wanted. Some of the things that were a little up in the air were her family were not all on board when she first started talking about it and talking to me. She was a big presence though, so she was determined that she was going to get the family on board. And she did. I can't say that they were all happily on board when their mom actually did die, but they trusted her enough that they went along with what her requests were. And I'll come back to some of the other story, but one of the things I noticed with the family that by the end of all of their vigiling and by the end of the cremation, there was just this joy and this coming together that I don't think they expected either, and that they did it. They were able to be strong enough to get through that as a family unit, and then they invited other community in. Because of when their mom died, it happened just before a long weekend. And I think it was Easter long weekend, which always usually adds another day. So it's not just a 3 day. And so it meant that for them to keep their mom at home, that they would have to keep her at home for longer than they thought they would originally need to do. They were thinking of a 3 day, which is a very common number of days for people to want to vigil. And, there's lots of religious and cultural ties to that 3 day vigiling. So they ended up having to keep her at home for 5 days. Fortunately, it was at a time of year where outdoors it wasn't terribly hot out, so they're able to keep a window open. I had helped them with the cooling packs so that they could keep their mom's body as cool as possible. And we were just in contact as the days went on. At the end of the 5 days, when we were moving their mom out of the home and to the crematorium, the one daughter who was so determined to make this all happen, asked if she could ride with me in the vehicle as we went out. And I said, sure, of course. So the two of us were there. And when she got in the car, she just was like, oh, and she turned around and looked at her mom and she said, Mom, I'm so thankful and I'm so ready for you to go. And this just needs to happen. And I was just so taken aback. I had never in all my years heard a family say, I am ready for you, Mom, to now go and be cremated. And to just understand that in those 5 short days, which probably felt like a long time in some ways, that they had so quickly been able to come to that. They were seeing the physical changes that were happening in their mom, and they were just kind of done with that. Not in a negative way, but it was just like, we've done our work and now we do this, and these are the right steps to take. And then at the crematorium, there was quite a few people. There was laughing. I seem to remember kids running around. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a little dance going on somewhere. Like, it was quite an occasion. It wasn't a typical witnessing of the cremation that's gut-wrenching and hard and horrible. And not that they weren't saddened. Of course, there's still that element there, but they were all ready for that to happen. So that was truly transformative for me as someone who is still trying to wean myself off of some of the conventions of funeral service, to see what it actually means for families when they get to take the time they need and they get to say, okay, we're ready and now we can move forward. So they will just always stand out of my mind.
That's just such a beautiful story. I think it says so much. Thank you for sharing. And it just makes me think of what you said. There's this idea of when a death happens, our internal timing is back
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Right. And like the time it takes to catch up
Yeah.
internally on a more of a soul level or whatever word you want to use. That's a word I choose to use, but that internal level to the enormity of what's just happened, it takes time. And we're so rushed through these things. And what an incredible story to hear when people are given that time to allow for acceptance, really. I think ceremony really does slow things down
Mhm.
to allow for people to catch up. And just to hear you describe how different the energy was with
Yeah.
this family in the crematorium, it was celebratory. There was an acceptance. They were there.
They were there.
They'd caught up
Yeah.
and they were ready. I'm imagining you have a lot of families like you alluded to that feel very different. It's like this is happening too fast and it's jarring and it's hard to reconcile. And I really think it changes how people live after that, pretty much
Absolutely.
forever.
Yeah.
And it's loss is always going to be hard, but the integration that happens with so much more ease and completeness when we can really slow things down leading up to death and after death.
Yeah. And like you said, just that acceptance for them to themselves to say, we accept it. They're not being told by the funeral director, you must now accept this because it's happened. And, the cremation is here. So you must accept it. When I'm with people at the crematorium, I've had to think about the language that I'll sometimes use, which is like, are you ready now for us to move your person into the cremation chamber? And I think about that. I think, how could they be ready unless they have decided that they've got there, like this family did? And unfortunately, they're not the norm. They are in a minority, and most families aren't getting there before we're telling them you must be here, you must accept. So yeah,
And I love your story in for that reason that it isn't the norm. And yet, if we share more stories like this,
yeah,
it, I think, has the power to invite people, plant seeds, and invite people to consider meeting death differently. And that other aspect of your story, I think, is really worth pulling out. And that is not all people in the family were on board.
yeah,
And by the end of it, there was dancing in the crematorium.
yeah.
Like, I really believe that this in this role, we don't want to lead people anywhere. We want to empower people with information and let them make their own informed decisions. And I know this isn't for everyone. I will say that I know this isn't for everyone, but I've just heard countless stories and in my own practice, seen the deeply healing effects
Mm,
of taking that time and being
yeah,
with the dead. And
yeah,
it's one of those things, I will just take all barriers out, like just to get people there without trying to seem like I'm persuading them, but like, do you need a ride? I can pick you
yeah,
up. Why don't
yeah,
we go there? Can someone join you? So that people can really be guided to spend time with their people because it almost always ends up to be something that people are glad they did afterwards, even if it's uncomfortable.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, Nayo, if there was one thing that you would like the dying and their people to know, what would it be?
Ooh, it's probably more than one thing, but today in this moment, I'm going to say this because of how many times I've seen this, is to know that our dead are still our people. They can still be recognizable by us and help us by being with them to get on a grief path that will be a healthy one and help us with our future life and living. And I just want to encourage people to be as brave as you can to spend time with your dead in whatever way that means. Over and over again, I see this transformation with people when they are not sure that this is what they want to do, but something inside of them is saying, I should at least go and hold their hand. And then the next thing, they've spent 2 hours with them. They're on their phone talking to other family members. They're going out of the room and trying to bring people who are not feeling that courage or that strength to do it, saying, you must come in these really short periods of time. You can go from being just so hurt and angry and devastated and, like physically drawn into yourself to just feeling that weights just come off of them. That just gets to fall away. They can just be sad, purely sad, and not have all of these other really strong negative emotions pressing down on them. And I know personally for myself what it does for me. So I can only imagine for others how that allows them to just be able to move forward and know that, everything about your life, yes, it's changed, but it's not over. You still also get to have life and find joy, and this one moment, this one brave kind of interaction can just be a pivotal time to make all that happen.
Well said. Yes, thank you. More, please.
Yeah.
Okay, now if we're going to dream a little bit here and dream into the future of death care, what do you see? Like, how do you see us meeting death with more acceptance, like we've talked about, and maybe more grace?
With acceptance, I have so much hope for that. And part of it has been because of the pandemic. I think people on a really global level got used to speaking about death. I mean, at no other time that I can remember in my 52 years have we had a daily death toll going on. And as horrible as all that was, it did force us to think about our mortality. So I picture more of that people, there's just more of an ease around our lives and our deaths, an acceptance that this will happen so that we can more gracefully find our way through the grief. We're never going to escape any of it. I want our politicians at all levels to be real about this too. You don't just get to be politicians when it comes to death. And so much of how death care is practiced is regulated and it's informed and it's shaped by government, whether it's municipal or provincial, maybe not so much federally, but definitely municipally and provincially. And those people in those very important roles, public roles, can somehow just choose not to think about the impact of death on their community, the choices that are there. There are many municipalities that will have a municipal cemetery. That's fabulous. They don't have a crematorium. Meanwhile, overwhelmingly, most of their community are choosing cremation. This probably sounds a bit odd because I am a for-profit business practice, but really we should be able to have a model that is also there for people, that is supported at a community level and from our politicians, that we have a community place to be cremated, to be aquamated, to be terramated or natural organic reduction, to be buried, that it really becomes a community of care all around, and that it not be left to for profit, and it not be left to death doulas to somehow be trying to find a way to build bridges between healthcare and death care. It's so disjointed and it need not be. And it's crazy that it is, because this is such a commonality. If ever there was something that made us all the same, it's that we all died. So that vision I will always hang on to and hope that someday we'll have some form of it.
Like true community death care.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, I'm going to dream into that with you. So, as our way of saying goodbye, we're going to end on a note of gratitude. I've got my gratitude cards from the schooloflife.com. And let's see. Let's see what we got here today. I'm going to give them a little shuffle. And oh, this one looks good. It looks like a nice rainy sidewalk.
Yeah.
There you go.
Beautiful.
And it says, oh, we are never too far from a very hot bath.
I love that.
Are you a bath person?
Love baths.
On the daily. That's great. That one lights me
Yeah,
up.
yeah, yeah. Ooh, something to think about. Evening's coming.
So grateful for you, Nio. I truly am. And I could just sit here and talk to you all day, but I know you're busy. You got things to do. So we will say goodbye for now. And I really look forward to connecting with you again. Until our paths cross again, keep up the amazing work.
And you, Tracy, all wonderful things to you. Yeah, thank you.
And if you want to know more about Nio, you can go to the show notes and find contact information there and head on over to the KORU website. So thank you for listening and bye for now.